Well, hi everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Feeling Smarter. As always, I'm joined by Tim Miller. G'day, Tim. How are you?
Yeah, going pretty well, Aaron. How are you doing?
Not too bad, thank you.
Good.
Well, as we approach the final weeks of the year, one of the topics that we thought we'd cover is around the payment of income streams. And in particular, Tim, the quirkiness, I think we might call it, of a pension that starts after the 1st of June. So I might get you to kick things off as to why there's a level of quirkiness to it when we think about the requirements of a pension starting and the pro rata requirements and how they differ, obviously, from the 1st of June onwards.
Yeah, so what we know, Aaron, is that when we start a pension, we have to determine, one, the value of the account balance immediately prior to the pension commencing, so we can lock in our tax-free and taxable percentages that will apply to the splittable benefits from that point on. But then if we are calculating a pension that commences on any day other than the 1st of July, we have to do a pro rata calculation for the number of days, including commencement date, up until the 30th of June. But there's a carve out within the legislation that says if the pension commences on or after the 1st of June, that you don't have this minimum pension obligation. So whilst you can draw down a pension if you start in the month of June, there is no obligation. And the bonus being that the fund is considered to be in pension, and there's a little bit to play out there yet, but the fund is considered to be in pension, and therefore considered to be entitled to the exempt current pension income deduction.
Yeah, so when we think strategically, and I guess we're going to talk about the difference between SIS and tax shortly here, but once you're in pension, then obviously we need to contemplate how ECPI would work within that particular period. So strategically wise, it makes sense to look at that pension if we know there is going to maybe be a capital gain, if we know there's a large level of income that's going to be derived during that period, and where we may be able to move the fund entirely into that pension phase, so i.e. the fund is segregated for that period, then we ultimately get the tax exemption for that period. The other part, though, that I'm probably a bit more interested in is when we look at the requirements under the Tax Act, we do have our tax ruling 2013/5 that talks about the definition of a superannuation income stream. And can I get you to elaborate why we need to sort of look at that in parallel with what we see in SIS, where it says, well, yeah, if you just take a pension after the 1st of June, the minimum is effectively zero.
Yeah, well, I guess a lot of it really stems from the definition of what is an income stream, and one of the key issues there is that it's ultimately a series of payments. Now, when they define a series of payments, they also indicate that a series of payments can include annual payments, but to be considered annual, it means you need more than 1 year. So if you're paying one. Or let's assume you started a pension in the 1st of June and you didn't draw down on the income stream in that year, then not only would you need to draw down in the following year, but then you would probably need to also draw down in the 3rd year as well to ensure that you have a series, because one doesn't make a series.
Yeah, and probably to that extent, in practice, we would argue, and I think that I would, if wearing an auditor hat here, you would want to see that series of payments connected to each other before the audit's done of that year in which the pension started in June, because the impact of not having a pension means that the payments that are taken are not income stream payments and are therefore lump sums. So to me, there's a real importance in saying, well, you need to very quickly be able to connect the dots. And that may mean you've got one payment, but you may need to then make that subsequent payment reasonably quickly, because these are the questions that would come up within the audit of that particular year. So the really making sure those two gel, in my view, are crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. And to I guess go one step further with that is that, you know, the difference between a pension and a lump sum is negligible in the sense of an account-based pension where somebody has retired after the age of 60, because the drawdown is going to be non-assessable, non-exempt income. So for an amount to be treated as a lump sum rather than a pension is neither here nor there, other than it might have a tax ramification on the fund. However, if it's a transition to retirement income stream where they don't have access to lump sum withdrawals, then that can obviously be problematic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other part to that then is that if you have the failure of the pension, then ultimately it's not only the loss of the ECPI, but if you've got multi-pensions running, of course, then you may have some potential issues around there as well. But I guess, Tim, what this all highlights to us is it is a great strategy to contemplate at this time of year, because in particular, as you may be looking at the tax position of the fund leading into 30 June, but there are some important steps that you need to make sure you jump through so that you don't trip up and ultimately all the planning what you're trying to do dissipates very, very quickly.
Yeah, and probably for me, one of the things that you and I often discuss here, Aaron, is that probably one of the most critical parts of the planning is that this is the time of year where individuals start to have a greater appreciation for any deduction they might wish to claim for their personal contributions. And one of the key requirements is to be able to lodge a valid notice of intention to claim a tax deduction is that money hasn't been moved out of accumulation. So if you've commenced the pension, then you can only commence it with the money you've received, and that money is effectively a non-concessional contribution until you claim a tax deduction or provide a valid notice. So people need to be aware that if they're going to commence a pension on or after the 1st of June, that they would need to lodge their appropriate notice of intention to claim a tax deduction prior to the pension commencement for them to be entitled to that tax deduction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a very good reminder as well. So, well, as we said at the beginning, approaching 30 June, there are a range of strategies here. We've spoken a bit about pensions. We've spoken previously about elections around the pensions as we sort of hit the 1st of July as well. A lot of these documents are naturally available on the Smarter SMSF platform as well. So we encourage you to take the opportunity to find out more about those. Thanks once again for your input, Tim.
No problems, Aaron. Look forward to catching up next week.
Will do. Thanks again. Bye for now.